Hi, everybody.
Hello.
We're your ACMs. We will wait for a minute or so more to let a few more people come on, and then we are going to introduce ourselves and kind of work through our slideshow. If you have any questions, just type them into the Q&A box, and then we'll see them and try to answer them as we go. If not, we'll try to answer them at the end. If we blink out for a minute, our internet connection might be a little unstable, so just bear with us. We'll be right back if that happens.
Okay. So who's behind the lens? First, we have the lovely and wonderful.
Okay, this is Barb. I'm Barb Peaster. This is my third year as Affiliate Challenge Master. And we'd love to welcome you all here. I'm also a South Metro person, and we're happy to have you. And you can ask questions. Hopefully that will work, and we'll try and answer as best we can. So, Lindsay?
I'm Lindsay. I work for the Jeffco region. I used to work in the Denver region, and I have been a participant in the program for an obscene amount of years since I was 6, and I just turned 33. So I work mainly in fine arts, but I also work in a lot of other challenges just because I like to change my day. But this is my second year as Affiliate Challenge Master and my 5th as a Regional Challenge Master.
Hi, I'm Jess. I'm the RCM for Noco Canyon, but I am your junior Affiliate Challenge Master for Colorado. I also have an obscene number of years in the program underneath my belt. I'm going to say 20 and counting because I'm still 29, right?
Obviously.
Yeah, obviously. So yeah, many years as a participant, an appraiser, an RCM, and an ACM. And I used to be structure, but I have defected to the best.
Stole her.
Yes, the best challenge, which is fine arts. So glad to have all of you, and welcome to Picture This.
All right, Central Challenge. Which way are we starting tonight?
Doesn't matter.
Where?
So we've got 4 main parts for our Central Challenge. There's the photograph, the story, the snapshot, and the new development. We'll talk more about each of these in depth as we go.
I just surprised them with that meme.
She just added that meme. It's great.
Who doesn't love lists? Okay. List item number 1, the photograph.
You want to do the photograph?
The photograph. All right. So every team will be doing some research and choosing a photograph that must be, excuse us, we just had dinner too, that must be publicly available. It has to be a single image, but it can be taken by any kind of a camera, even a motion picture camera.
X-ray.
It can be a video.
Infrared.
Infrared, there you go. So the kids are just encouraged to go do some research, find a photograph. The photograph can be touched up if that's the way they find it. What they're not allowed to do is be in the photo, take the photo, or produce a photo just for this challenge. So you'll be hearing a lot about that as we go through everything. There are lots and lots of cool photos out there. Just look at Google Images, look through books. It can be a photograph of a painting. That still counts. We have a lot of examples that we'll show you along the way too. But I do think the kids are going to enjoy this. It can be a selfie. It just can't be of them.
Right, it can be their selfie.
Publicly available selfie if that's what they're interested in.
Yep. So it could be from a Kardashian Instagram. It could be from a telescope. It could be from the Library of Congress. As long as it's publicly available in some fashion, it's allowed.
Okay. So some examples of some famous photos and all the different things that the kids could potentially use are displayed here. The example in the bottom left corner is one of those space photos. What was significant about that, Lindsay?
It used all sorts of different types of lenses. So it's an infrared. This is not what our eyes would see, but it's what the camera can see beyond the visible spectrum of light.
So that counts.
That counts.
All
it's
right.
a camera.
All right. And as you can see, some of these photos have people and some of them do not, and that is all okay too.
Yep, your photo does not have to include people. It doesn't have to be in color. It doesn't have to be a quote unquote famous photo. And just as a caution, if you Google famous photos, you're going to get
a lot of dark stuff.
A lot of dark stuff, because sometimes famous things are
what's that? Oh my gosh. Sorry. Technical difficulty.
A lot of important events are memorialized in photo, and sometimes those events can be really rough. But we encourage children to pick rough subject matters if they want to. As long as they're comfortable with it, and as long as you're comfortable with it, it's allowed. Just remember that we do have to present to an audience, and that audience can be as young as 5 or as old as 99. So it should be family friendly, but as long as they handle any subject in a very appropriate way, I think that any subject is appropriate.
And we can always disclose that it may be some intense subject matter at the beginning of the demonstration performance. All right, moving on to the story. Barb, do you want to take that one?
All right. The story is a huge part of this challenge. It's actually about half of your points are going to be coming from taking that photograph, integrating it into a story. Now, your story, I mean, we kind of know what's happening in a lot of pictures, but that doesn't mean you have to stick with what we know is real. The kids are really encouraged to come up with an imaginary beginning, middle, and end. And as long as that photograph is included and is integrated in there, they can go any way they find interesting with their story. One of the things they must have is an unseen character. So the unseen character can be a leaf on a tree. It can be someone that's in a photo, but they were somehow camouflaged or concealed, unrecognized, or they can even be outside the boundaries of the photograph. The photographer can be the unseen character. I think a lot of teams will go in that direction, but they don't have to be. Unseen does not mean they're also unheard. They can certainly make sounds in some way. I mean, it's really up to the team. It can be anytime before the photograph. Their story could almost be a prelude to showing the photograph. It's really up to the team where they want to use that.
And just as a reminder, just because a person is unrecognized or camouflaged does not mean that they are completely invisible. So sometimes I think teams might get stuck on the word unseen. A person can be seen, and maybe they change from being the villain to the hero, and that character transformation is unseen. And so someone says, "Oh, we didn't recognize you because you're doing this." That's still unseen. That character was unseen until that moment. So try to make sure your kids remember that concealed, camouflaged, unrecognized, or outside of the boundaries of the photograph is something they try to focus. That's not great.
I will answer it. You may continue.
So we had a question that was talking about our voices are a little choppy. We don't know if it's on our end or if it's on individual ends, but like we said, our internet connection might be a little bit unstable, so just bear with us and tell us that you need some help, and we will try to say things again when we have the better connection. We included this silly little GIF of the guy disappearing onto the Oscar screen because he is seen and then unseen, and so it's not terribly what we're looking for, but it's also kind of a silly way to make someone camouflaged in the background.
But one thing that I like to stress, especially when, oh, sorry, wrong, let me go back real quick. When it comes to the story and this unseen character, is to really coach those kids to understand the definition of those words. So the definition of unseen, the definition of unrecognized, the definition of camouflage, what could that mean and how could that be represented in different ways? That'll really help them kind of open their mind to the different possibilities rather than taking it so literally.
Yeah.
All right, the unseen character can be anything. Using any theatrical style or method, it's really up to the team to come up with the way they'd like to represent that unseen character. You can have more than one unseen character. Actually, they could all be unseen, but they have to choose which one is going to be scored. Now, you do have 2 team choice elements. If you had, say, more unseen characters, those could always be scored there. So if they like that, they can certainly do it. The location can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be on Earth. It doesn't have to be a real place. It's the way the kids interpret that picture and decide how they want to do it. At first I thought, future might be a little tricky, but actually I can see situations where your photograph could be taken as part of the future, because I think there's ways that you could do
yeah.
What if it's a premonition, man?
Yeah,
this is real thing.
There are lots of sci-fi stories about someone sending something back, a photo, a note, or something that changes the future. I'm into it. So let's see some future. If your team wants to do it, let's see it.
Anyway.
I want to see some past, and I want to see some real and imaginary and future and past
all the
and present, all of the
and
things.
I'd love to see some things that aren't just humans.
Right.
I'd like to know the story of the bird sitting in the tree. So, entertain us.
Awesome. So the next element is a snapshot. So the snapshot is an actual pause that recreates the team selected photograph. So if you see the picture of this gal here, she's taking a picture with the Polaroid camera. It's kind of like setting up for that Polaroid picture for the audience. And it should be the same as whichever their picture is that they chose. So they have to use theatrical or artistic techniques so that it's not actually an actual photograph or anything like that. They're kind of practically acting this out, and it needs to be visible from 25 feet, and it can last as long as they want. It can be as brief as a half a second or as long as 10 seconds or longer, or however long they feel like they need to hold that pause in order to convey their point. The other thing is it cannot be part of the new development, which is another element we'll discuss in a moment here. So in order to further illustrate the snapshots, if you see the Renoir's dance at the, I'm not even going to try to say that French word because nope, on the top left, that is actually a photograph of a famous painting. And when you look at the photograph on the top right, that's actually a still from the Gilmore Girls live painting Festival of Living Art episode. And that literally is people that a photograph of people who have some like face paint and all that stuff on in order to reenact that painting. So that gives you a really good example of what we're looking for in a snapshot. And the picture down below is a picture of a flash mob, and it's called Freeze. So it's a flash mob that is freezing. So just another example of what a snapshot might be able to look
like. The new development. So the new development must cause a change in perspectives, beliefs, viewpoints, and/or thought processes of one or more of the characters. It must use it must be a visual effect that uses a photographic technique. There's a list of 12 on your challenge, and we'll go through those, kind of give you some examples of what they might look like. But it has to be at one of these. It can be more than one technique. However, only one can be scored. It doesn't have to modify an actual photo. keep that in mind, because I think teams might get stuck on that it has to be a photographic technique and you don't have to modify an actual photo. It has to be visible from 25 feet, just like everything else, because you never know what kind of space you're going to be in. And then it must not be a part of the snapshot, which is what we just talked about.
Right. And something that Lindsay had said before is that you can use practical effects to give the impression of the photographic technique rather than doing an actual modification on a photo, and that's what we're hoping to see.
And you can do it can be a practical effect. It can also be a digital effect. So if you can use projector, your team can choose to use projectors, or they can do a practical effect. It might be a really cool way to do both. Just don't let them get stuck on one way to do it.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
So do you want to talk about technique?
So this is a list of all of the things that they can choose from. They can use more than one of these effects, but they don't have to. They can just choose one. And this is a place where we'd like to see the teams do some research and actually look at some of these different, actually we had to do some research on some of them.
A lot of research.
Because we weren't sure
what
is this effect. So yeah, we are learning along the way too.
Which is the whole goal, and it's amazing.
DI is all about learning.
It is. So, and this is a place where the kids could try and make their own photographs. They're certainly welcome to do that as well, but they do have to show the technique in a way that's more of a theatrical.
Yeah.
Just so, it has to be shown from 25 feet away, and trying, if they take a picture and develop that, for the most part, it's going to be kind of small to really be able to see the effect. So we're looking for more of a theatrical effect in showing, taking what you learned about these different effects and applying it to, okay, here's some.
Sorry.
So that's okay. We're good. Hopefully
I'm just trying to figure out the
working.
chat situation.
So let's see.
So Jerry asks, does the visual effect have to be part of the new development and cause a new way to view things? So there's a two-part answer to that. Yes, the visual effect does have to be part of the new development. The new development is some sort of visual effect, and it must cause a change. So it can cause a change in any way that the team defines what that means. So it could be a way they view things. It could be the way something looks. It could be the way something feels. It could be the way the angle something's shot. It just has to cause a change. That's all it says. So it is really up to their interpretation what that change ends up being.
It could be a point of view, a perspective. It's really up to the team. And when they do their paperwork, they're going to explain it a little bit to us, to the appraisers. And so whatever they say, as long as they can verbalize it, we will judge them on what they've asked us to appraise.
And whether or not the effect is exactly what, let's say, whether or not so let's say your team is using multiple exposure effect, and whether or not what we see is actually explicitly defined as multiple exposure effect, if your team describes it on the paperwork and to what we see or what we're looking for, that's what we're appraising. We're not going to appraise them on the artistic quality of their multiple exposure effect on stage. Not necessarily. We're going to be appraising the creativity of it. We're going to be appraising the effectiveness of it and the integration of it. So as long as they tell us what we're looking for really well, and it happens how they want it to, that's what we're looking for.
Are you ready for the next?
Okay, so do we have another question?
No, choose.
Nope, I got that. Don't worry.
Okay.
All right. So cropping. cropping seems like it would be one of the easier effects to convey, but here is a very popular painting from, is it the Sistine Chapel?
Yes.
Yeah, easy for me to say. And so the picture on the left is like the full gamut of it, and then the cropping on the right gives you that kind of more zeroed in look, and gives, and both actually representations of this
Cropping.
are very popular
Right.
images, and the cropping could go either way. So they could crop out information and go like from right to left, or they could crop in information and go like from right to left.
Exactly. So
because there's plenty of images available of just the hands reaching forward.
yeah, it's
So
kind of a
if that's if that's their picture, then you're going to zoom out and show more if that's what they choose to do.
exactly.
And
Maybe,
it could be completely different.
right.
Then it doesn't have to be that.
So maybe their photo is of the hands touching, and then when they crop out, maybe it's not Adam and God, maybe it's a post-it man and a person getting their mail or something. So that it could be really interesting to see a crop out and a crop in.
Yeah.
So focus and depth of field. This is just how it's the distance between the closest and farthest objects in what you see on the lens. And it just is where your focus is what is sharp. So there could be some really cool ways to do this practically, and I think that teams could have a lot of fun with this one. But again, it's whatever they choose. Hello. Hello.
So high speed photos. So this is like when you're taking pictures of really fast phenomenon. So it could actually look a few different ways. So the three photos that are kind of to the left and top show a fast phenomenon where you take a quick picture and you can see exactly that split second. So the water balloon popping, the bubble popping, or the tennis ball spinning, the wet tennis ball spinning. Another way that you can look at high-speed photography is like the picture of this BMX bicyclist. So he's doing the jump, and you can see the action in the move and the movement in the photo of a fast phenomenon. That's actually a multiple exposure effect and a high-speed effect, but you know, either way, it actually demonstrates that motion. So
yeah,
And the kids will decide which one of the techniques they're representing. And if they say it is, that's what we're going for.
Yep, they're the boss. They run the show.
Yep.
it's true. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know a lot about infrared cameras.
So I'm a bit of a nerd. As you meet me and through the challenge, we'll be at all of the tournaments as much as we can this year. So you'll be able to meet all of us at one point, and then we'll all be at state. But I'm a bit of a nerd, so you'll get to know me as much as I am. I can talk, I promise. But so
No more wine for you.
no more wine for me. So the image on the left is Pluto that we can see through a telescope. So it's not a radio telescope, it's just what the visible light allows us to see of the planet. The one on the right is with infrared, and so it's from a satellite, obviously, that was carrying a radio telescope and infrared cameras, and this is what Pluto would look like if we could see infrared. Infrared changes what we can see, and so the way it could be really cool.
What? Did you say it causes a change in what we see?
Oh man.
She's so smart.
We love puns and dad jokes.
And also that jokes.
But yeah, it's a way that light is changed and it changes what we see. So that also could offer a lot of really interesting effects practically and digitally.
I'm reminded of your dog.
Lens effect or lens flare is what it sounds like. There's a flare from a light source in a lens. Sorry, our dog Bella is our mascot is trying to join in our webinar.
We have a puppy. Usually she's quiet, but she's having a little too much fun tonight. Sorry.
I'm winding her up. I've got to stop.
Bella.
So J.J. Abrams, who does Star Trek and now Star Wars, is known for his lens effects and lens flares to the point where his wife tells him she cannot see what's happening in a scene. And so that's why I included the Star Trek scene, is because it almost obscures James Kirk's face. Which,
what? Did you say he's nearly unrecognizable?
I did.
How about that?
So lens flare could make your unseen character unrecognizable, or, and the opposite, shine a light on them and make them seen from unseen. It could also, the picture on the right is a diamond ring effect from a solar eclipse, and that's a very famous type of lens flare. So again, it could be not necessarily an impediment to something. It could make something extra beautiful. So it just depends on how your team wants to find it and wants to see it.
Lighting. Oh, here's our guy.
Here's Lindsay's guy. All right. So different lighting, different angles of lighting, different qualities of lighting can really change the feeling of a photograph. So here we have 3 photographs of the illustrious Brad Pitt. And if you look, so the picture to the left, you have that straight on forward lighting, which leaves him with pretty much nothing to hide. And then you have a little kind of side lighting in the middle and some back lighting over on the right. So your side lighting, he looks like his usual charming gentleman. And then the picture on the right with that back lighting, he doesn't look like quite as savory a character.
No.
So it's just another technique that we can use to give a different feeling to characters just based on the way that we show their lighting.
Yeah.
And the lighting can actually pinpoint different parts of well, his face in this case, but depending on what the subject is, it may be highlighting something that was unseen before.
Yeah.
So you can see how this is all going to tie together. And I'm sorry about my puppy today. She's being a little naughty.
It's my fault. I wind her up.
She's the fan arts mascot. It's fine. So Carrie just asked, does the lens flare actually have to be in a lens system, or can it be a theatrical effect mimicking a lens flare? Yes, I actually think there could be lots of really cool practical ways to do a lens flare, in that it aren't just light coming through a piece of glass. So I think that if teams think about it, they could probably figure out how to make a practical effect. It doesn't have to be lighting. It doesn't have to be through a glass pane or plastic pane. And so it could be practical if you guys can figure out how to do it.
Totally theatrical effects. So I think I think this is going to be very exciting to see how the kids have done their research, what they choose, and how they represent it.
All right. Awesome. Oh my gosh, it's going crazy. All right.
Do you want to do long exposure?
No, you go right on ahead. I'm going to manage this dog.
You do long exposure. I'm going to have to get something to bribe the dogs.
So long exposure is just what it sounds. The shutter is open for a long period of time, and it allows much more light in than your average photo. The one on the top left is just a star trail photo. It's showing the movement of Earth, and then it's showing the star trails because the aperture was open for a longer period of time than just taking a snapshot of the sky. The middle photo down on the bottom here is probably with a camera phone or something with a laser light or something, and it's just drawing in air. We've all done it with sparklers. And then the one on the top right is just your average, average water photo that makes the water really soft because they've held the camera open for a long period of time.
Optical filter photography. So this is probably one of the most basic photographic techniques that you're going to see, and it can be as simple as like a color filter, as you can see on this image, from the regular beautiful amazing sunset to a fiery beautiful amazing sunset. So that's probably the simplest of filters that you've ever seen. But say they wanted to use like a filter like you can use on your iPhone when they put like a dog on your face or something like that. That's another filter. Or like I like to say, I like to use a soft focus filter for me so you don't see my wrinkles. All those different filters are possibilities, and we could find some really fun practical ways to make those
I'm exploring
a real
depth of
thing.
field over
Oh,
here.
very nice.
Also,
Look at
very
her.
good for the no wrinkle.
Reflections can be really cool. So the one on the left is just a picture a person took. The cool thing is this picture in particular offers a lot of unseen character possibilities. So who is the photographer? Who are in those buildings? Who's in that airplane? Who's around this person? Because clearly they're in the middle of a street. Are there cops around them? Is there a car coming behind them?
Is he fixing to
Is
get hit by a
he gonna
car?
get hit by a car? And go visit Jess in the trauma
Please
department. I think that reflections can offer a lot of really cool opportunities for teams, and I think that they can also offer a lot of mystery and intrigue. You can also, there's a picture in the slideshow we were showing as we opened the meeting that's a picture of an eye, and most of the reflection is in the iris, but there's a reflection in the cornea that is not quite as defined, and it's
barely perceptible.
barely perceptible, but it's there, and so that gives you even more depth of this unseen character. Who is that? What are they doing? So I think that reflections can be really powerful. The one on the right is a spoon, weirdly enough, on a countertop, and so it doesn't look like a spoon, so it might change the way you see things. The reflection might change the way you see things, and there's a lot of really cool ways to make reflections happen.
I saw a book jacket today of a brand new book about Elton John. Of course, he always has on, crazy glasses,
He's the best.
and the reflection in those glasses is amazing. So once you've been researching this, these pictures are just going to start bouncing out at you, and you're going to start recognizing, oh, I know what technique they've used in this photo. So have fun with it.
Exactly. And also, going back to finding photos, Siri apparently will also pull up photos for you if you ask her to do a photo search. So that's another option as well. We discovered she is good at photo searches.
I would be careful about your search terms.
Correct.
Because you can find some.
There's no safe search on Siri.
There's no safe search on Google.
On
I'm
Google,
just saying.
right.
Just supervise your children.
Yep.
All right.
Make sure that they're doing age-appropriate things.
Tilt shift.
Oh, man.
The illustrious tilt shift. So tilt shift, we found a definition on the interweb that says the use of camera movements to change the orientation. Yeah, you can read it. And that really didn't mean a lot to us. So we actually got the opportunity to speak with another team manager who's more familiar with tilt shift, who informed us that it actually is a type of wide angle lens that straightens out your verticals. So if you use a standard wide angle lens, the vertical lines, as you would say, on kind of the outer aspects of the photo become curved because of the way that the lens is shaped. The tilt shift lens straightens those curves out. So it gives you back those straight lines, but still gives you that wide angle view.
So it's used in architecture a lot.
Correct. And it can make the things that have been straightened out look a lot like toys. So if you see from all of these pictures here, those are actual pictures of actual things, but everything looks like a toy because they've used this tilt shift lens technique.
Right.
So kind of a neat thing that I learned.
Me too.
This was the one that I was absolutely positive I'd never heard of and had no idea of what it meant. And I got the same definition when I looked it up, and I thought, yeah, I think I understand. It just means moving the camera, but no, that's not what it means. And honestly, we were all enlightened last week when we spoke to a team manager who actually understood and was able to explain it to us.
And just think of all the practical ways you could make a wide angle on your set look less curved or curve things. There's a lot of possibilities with this one, even though it's a more difficult choice.
I at first thought it was hard, and now that I've thought about it and learned more about it, I'm like, oh no, I'd totally use that one. It's so easy. It'd be so fun. Anyway.
Yeah, totally.
All right.
That's the former team members in us.
Yeah, there you go.
And team manager.
Team manager, sorry. Never was a team member.
That's okay. That still counts.
So
zooming is kind of obvious. It's kind of like cropping. You can zoom in, you can zoom out. So there's macro and micro. The one on the left, I believe, is a Christmas tree or stoplights. It's one of the two. I don't remember. And then there's a teeny tiny little mushroom that's growing out of the shrubs, and on the right is a classic snowflake picture. These are all examples of micro photography. Macro is also an option for zooming. So you can get closer to an object, you can get farther away from an object. One thing I would caution you on zooming, you can't interact with the audience. So your team has to make sure that if they're zooming closer to the appraisers and the audience, that they don't touch them for starters, and don't try to solicit a response. So don't touch them, don't solicit a response, but you can get closer to the audience and zoom. Yeah.
All right, finally we have scoring. So the big thing about the challenge this year with scoring is the story is 46% of the points. That's a big chunk of points. So we really stress integration of the photograph and the unseen character are those big ticket items in the story. And integration is like 100% always going to be something that we'll be looking for. So make sure that any aspects that are in it are well integrated.
So don't just make sure if your team has chosen a photo, they've written a phenomenal story, make sure that they understand that they can't just flash the photo and then have the story have nothing to do with the rest of the photo. Right. So just because, yeah, it's key.
The more integrated, probably is what we're looking for. I'm not going to say you're going to earn more points, because who knows what the rest of it's like. So, but it definitely is one of the main scoring elements is that the photograph is integrated.
And integration is an element of everything that we score in DI, pretty much.
Creativity and integration are the two most important things in DI.
Yeah. So there's that. So the second big picture or a big piece of scoring is the snapshot. It's worth 21%, which is still a whole lot of things. They're really looking at the theatrical and or artistic techniques that are used to recreate that snapshot of the original photograph. So one way to really ensure that the appraisers are seeing what they or what the kids want them to see is to focus on paperwork. In that paperwork, tell us what we're going to see, tell us what to look for, so we can be sure that we don't miss that part in the performance.
Especially since it could be very short.
Yes.
Or, I mean, it could be long.
Or it could be long.
It could be long.
Or it could be short.
And it can happen anytime during during that 8 minutes.
First 4 seconds, last 4 seconds. We don't ever know.
And we'll watch the whole thing.
Yep.
But just like we've said, the paperwork on this challenge is pretty critical, just because there's a lot of moving parts, and we want to make sure that your teams are as successful as possible.
Absolutely.
Us giving out points is our job. We do not like giving zeros. We don't like making a team feel bad. And so we want to make sure that we see what your team wants us to see. So make sure that you go through your paperwork with your team regularly. I've always told my team managers, if you have them fill out the paperwork as you go through your kind of creation journey in terms of where you end up at the challenge or the tournament, you'll be able to see that, oh, you know, our story is great, but we are not integrating anything into it. And so we're not going to get a lot of points. And then the new development is a huge part of the snapshot, and we can't do that. So it just kind of keeps you remembering all the scoring details, and there's so many little nuances that we want you to be successful.
Finally, the new development, we're at 33%, so another big chunk of points there. And what we're really focused on is the dramatic and visual impact, and which photographic technique are the team trying to convey to us. So,
and the visual impact is how it impacts and causes a change. So a change in perspective, a change in whatever the kids decide it is, but it needs to be that visual impact of change.
Right. The way I've been thinking about it is, if you need a visual example like I do, if you've ever seen Wicked, when Elphaba finally realizes that she is great as she is, and she doesn't need to have anyone give her limitations, and she's singing Defying Gravity at the end of the song, she rises off the floor, and it's totally unexpected. it looks like she's flying, but there's no, you can't see any brooms or ropes or whatever. That's a huge visual impact, and it's not terribly technical in terms of what it's doing, but that's what is kind of the new development. It needs to change something, and whether that's internal or external, and we need to see it, and it needs to be awesome, really. So those things are combined together are about 60% of your score, and then 25% is your instant challenge, and 15% are your team choice elements. Your team choice elements can be whatever your team chooses, as long as they are integrated into the story in some fashion and well, and as long as they show off what your team loves to do, is proud of, has learned. DI loves things about learning, and if we hear children who have learned a new technique or how to take photos or how to act or whatever, we love to see that journey. So it doesn't necessarily have to be something that they're the best at or that they think will get them all the points. It's something that they love, it's something that they're proud of, and it's something that they may have learned along the way.
I like to think of the team choice elements as your team's opportunity to show the appraisers who they are, where they came from, what they're about, what they've learned, and how they're going to rock through the rest of their life. That's really how I like to think about it.
Yeah.
So a word about paperwork too at this point. As appraisers, we love to see lots and lots of teams, and very often we have a very full slate.
It's because fine arts is the best, and we always have a lot of teams.
Well, that too. But generally, we have about 18 minutes, and that includes watching the production, their presentation, their 8-minute presentation, reading their paperwork, understanding their paperwork, and scoring the team.
And talking to the team. Yeah,
and talking to the team. When we do want to talk to the team after their presentation, if there's something that they showed the snapshot, but it was quick, we can ask the kids at that time to recreate their snapshot for us, just to make sure we really saw it. And we're going to see that before we've actually scored it. So they're not out. If everyone agrees that we didn't see it, that's when we unfortunately have to give a 0 for something. But it really has to be, if there are 3 people scoring that element, everyone has to agree it didn't happen. If one person sees it, then it did happen.
Yep.
And we will just go for clarification from the team. You will be bringing 6 copies of everything this year. We need 6 copies of the photograph. It can be done on a copier. If your original is in color, it would be great to have 1 color copy so that we can just, have an idea of if they're trying to recreate it using the same colors. That's their choice. But we will need 6 copies so that everyone doesn't have to be huge. They can be just, a small photograph, just large enough so that we can tell what the image is. And then we will not be giving back paperwork this year. We're going to be using mobile scoring at most of the regions. So if you have a lot of, make sure you keep a copy of everything so that then you can make more should you go on to the state level. So anything else on that? Paperwork's always important.
Paperwork's critical, but yeah, save everything that you do, just so that you can use it again in the future. And
Sorry, let me change this.
we're just gonna put our email addresses up on the screen so that you can have them. We'll also be emailing this presentation out to you so you can reference it if you ever need to with your team, or if you are trying to lure more delightful team managers to the dark side by and having them come to our challenge.
What is your
Lindsay.Kennedy.47. Gmail.
47?
Trying to get you all a copy of our emails. And it's probably on the website too. And
Mine isn't.
Yours
I don't
isn't?
exist on the website.
Oh,
So
dear.
the DI Colorado just
So
got a
I'm
new one.
bpeister@msn.com.
PEI.
P-E-I-S-T-E-R.
I'm so bad at those.
Well, my mother-in-law actually added an I.
And you said Gmail?
MSN.
No, an MSN.
So the DI Colorado website just, thank you.
There you go.
Just got redone, and some of the regions are up, some of the regions are not. I've noticed Jeffco is not up. Sorry, we're having trouble spelling. Spelling is hard.
Spelling is
Easter
so
is
hard. Oh.
Easter like Easter, but it's not spelled like Easter.
Okay,
So that
okay.
doesn't really
Anybody
help
have
either.
any questions? Oh, there's a new one.
¿Dónde está el Q&A? Oh, it's back here.
Yes, so we are going to be emailing you this presentation. Everyone who's registered on the webinar tonight will be able to get a copy probably tomorrow, if I'm honest, but it will be this week. And so you'll be able to share it with your team if you need to, so that they can see the examples of the new development effects.
Well, not exactly. So we had talked about, is it appropriate to just share this straight out to your team as an example of all of these things? And that's not exactly them finding the information themselves.
That's true.
However, if you were to show them, here's a picture, and you used a picture from here, but all the other information was kind of taken away, and ask them to assign what is the photographic technique in this picture, then we said that is probably an appropriate use of
that's a good way to put
because
that.
all of these pictures did come from Google.
Right.
So if you were to take off, the actual category and let the kids come up with the category, and there's a lot of pictures that are going to qualify for more than one technique.
Yeah, that's true.
So use them to discuss and have a great time on Google looking up some things.
With Safe Search on.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Very safe.
But yes, we will share this with you. Just make sure that you are not sharing it directly with your team. Let them try to find the information themselves. And if they need some guidance on where to look or what to look for, then you can reference this, and hopefully that will help you help them. Perfect, right?
Yep.
Yeah, sorry.
All right, we hope to see you all soon. We'll all be trying to get to just about all of the regional tournaments, and we will all be at state. So hopefully we'll get to see lots of people soon, but please feel free to contact us anytime you have questions. There are no clarifications yet. And not a lot of discussion going on between regional challenge masters have a forum. Not a lot of questions this year. So I don't know, I was on the writing team for this one. So I think it must have made a little bit more sense than, we had a lot of questions last year for Game On. I thought that one was a blast. It was really fun to write.
Super fun.
This is, as far as I know, and I've been involved in this for getting close to 30 years, never been a challenge on photography. So, you're the first. So we'll see how it goes. But we're thrilled you were with us tonight. And we hope we were helpful.
And informative. Yes. If you guys have any questions, shoot us an email. If you have any worries, shoot us an email and we will try to help you.
Yeah, question.
Lost audio again.
Oh, okay.
I wish we could have subtitles. I'm sorry, friends.
Don't know why.
Is there any
that was
benefits to
happening.
teams to have a fancy technical scene changes? So Jerry asks, is there any benefit for teams to have fancy technical scene changes? I would say
Can be a team choice element.
I would say it's really up to your team. It depends on what it is that they are deciding to pull together for their performance. That may or may not actually add much to what they've got going on. So we'll absolutely accept any kind of fancy technical
we
scene
like
changes.
fancy.
We love fancy.
Sure, but just
Um,
because a team is fancy doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be number one. It depends on how well it's done. It depends on how well it's integrated. It also depends on its purpose. If something is fancy for fancy's sake, it doesn't add a lot to the performance. So technology doesn't necessarily mean better.
But it could.
But it could.
It could.
It could. We love fancy, but that's
Yeah.
but just because you don't have fancy doesn't mean you won't be top notch.
Correct.
So that's what we're trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also remember, if you have access to it through a school or through a team member's family, use it. It's a usable resource. Just make sure that you are including whatever you use in your expense report and making sure that you don't buy $1,000 pieces of equipment for this challenge.
All right. Any other questions? Going once, going twice?
All right.
All right. I think that that's going to conclude the webinar for this evening. Thanks so much for your time. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for your commitment to the Destination Imagination program and to your teams most of all.
Yep, they're the most important part.
And we will see you guys
Hopefully
coming up soon.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Good night.
Night.
Are we still?